Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to our virtual space. We'll give folks a second to filter in from wherever they might be. Just take a minute to get settled, get comfortable. We've left a couple of tips and tricks for Zoom on the screen. If this is not your first time, you will know all these things intimately. If it is, it's really just meant to make your experience a little bit smoother. We're fairly low tech today, so as long as you have a working internet, you should be all set. And we'll just take another 20 seconds or so, and then we'll get started. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Claire Graves. I'm the Director of Marketing at Atlantic. We're so thrilled that you've chosen to spend this hour with us. We will be together an hour. We'll get you guys out of here by about 5 o'clock Eastern time. The first 45 minutes or so will be a conversation between Neil and Giancarlo. And then the last 15 minutes or so we'll reserve for questions from all of you. So if you have questions along the way, really at any point, we encourage you to enter those questions in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a desktop, I believe it's at the top of your screen if you're on mobile. And we will collect those, and then around 4:45, we'll select a couple of questions that have not been hit on and make sure that, that we have enough time to do so. And otherwise, thank you again for joining us. And I will hand it over to Neil, and then I'll be back at the very end.
Great.
Neil, take it away.
Claire, thank you so much. Before we get started with Giancarlo, firstly, I wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here with Atlantic on our live with Atlantic virtual Fridays. While we're in this crazy, strange pandemic time, we're trying to stay present with all of you in our community, our friends and patrons and audience members. So we're just thankful that you're here, and we're eager to get back to live theater as soon as possible. We don't know when that will be, but we'll certainly be staying in touch with all this virtual programming. And we have made a point to make this all for free. Obviously, these are difficult times for all of us, and we're coming to the end of our fiscal year. So if you enjoy this and feel the desire to make a small contribution of any size, there's a button you can push, and Claire can tell you more about that at the end. But again, we're just so grateful for your support and grateful you could be here. And we're having faith we're going to get back to live theater soon. In the meantime, I couldn't be more thrilled and honored to welcome our friend, my friend, Giancarlo Esposito. He's a longtime member of the Atlantic Theater Company. Obviously, he's had an extraordinary career. You know, lots of you know him from Breaking Bad. He's been Dear White People. He's been doing so much stuff recently. I knew him even before I met him from early Spike Lee films, even the film Taps when he was a kid, Bob Roberts, all kinds of amazing films. I'm not going to list all of them. We're going to talk a little bit more about his career as we get into it, but it really is an extraordinary career. Welcome, 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 Giancarlo. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Neil. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today, and with all of our virtual audience and of students and theater goers and artists and writers and producers, whoever may be tuning in. It's really an honor and a pleasure.
Well, thank you. So let's just start, because you've really had an amazing career, but you started when you were very young, right? I mean, I think your first show on Broadway was, you were 8 years old. Is that right?
That's right. I was 7.5, just turning 8. It was a show called Maggie Flynn, which starred Jack Cassidy, who I adored, and Shirley Jones. And it was a wonderful production that had a lot of great elements to it. It was a musical, so I started as, I want to say, a song and dance man. And, but that's how I did 5 Broadway musicals back to back after Maggie Flynn. But at that tender age, it really hooked me. It was back in the day where we had big set pieces, where the artistic design on Broadway was wenched. Your scenes were wenched on. There were a lot of people backstage. There was a lot to navigate, a lot of energy. And it was really, I remember in that particular piece as well, there was a set piece that came up from the basement that came up to the proscenium stage. So great theatrical elements artistically and lighting wise, that were big productions. If I remember correctly, Maggie Flynn was a cast of about 65 people. Wow. And really wonderful experience for me to become enthralled with, enamored with, and have a passion for that particular kind of production. It was like a big circus, and I really loved it.
And then, little known fact, weren't you also, I don't know how soon thereafter, in the original production of Sondheim's Merrily We Roll Along?
Yes, I was. A very special production and a wonderful experience to have worked with Hal Prince and Stephen Sondheim. And I felt it was a failed production in a way, based on the Kaufman and Hart musical from book that was done in the 30s. But it was an experience nonetheless that had me working with some really incredibly creative people. Sadly, our show didn't last very long, and but it was instrumental. It was an instrumental part of my life to be able to be a part of that production and work with such a genius as Sondheim, who was just always reflective, always on the creative edge of what he was writing, and very, very astute. And Hal Prince was just an absolute genius in my eyes. That particular show went on to have its success under James Lapine out in California, and some other incarnations of the show that really did become cohesive and really work.
Yeah. And before we get into your film and TV career, which has been amazing, I know you from the theater. You became a member of the Atlantic Theater Company after you just had amazing performance in Kevin Heelan's play Distant Fires, and soon thereafter you became a company member. But what also a lot of people don't, you had such an amazing theater career. You were in the famous production of Bauman Gilead, Lanford Wilson's play that John Malkovich, co-production between Steppenwolf and Circle Rep. I guess what I wanted to ask you is a little bit about the theater, because you've also been a guy who's inspired me both for his sort of sense of community, sense of spirituality, but how did the theater as a sort of basis for your career, talk a little bit about that, getting started in the theater and how, because obviously you've been more active recently in TV and film in amazing ways, but talk a little bit about your start in theater and how that affected you or what was important to you about that.
Well, the theater is everything to me, Neil. Even today, I pine to be on the stage always. And, but prior to our conversation yesterday, to prep and talk about what we might be talking about today, I thought, golly, like what are all my artist friends in New York doing? They must be going crazy not to be able to be on the stage. And that is, could be a little black box theater that Atlantic has. It could be at the studio space. It could be the performance space on 20th Street, or it could be on Broadway. For me, I link everything to my theater background. I start there. That seems to be what I've built my whole career on, is to be able to be attentive enough from being on the stage. So on the stage, you're alive. On the stage, there's no cut called. You're either on the train or off the train, as our dearest Anna Shapiro would always tell us when we work together. And I always take that with me because that feeling allows me to come in full, to be completely full, and not to worry if I flub or make a mistake, but to be connected to. And so that's the basis for the way I work. And I'm in gratitude to the theater days I had, because all kinds of things happen. You trip coming on, you miss your cue, you're running through the hallway going, oh my God, we're not, all of a sudden the PA goes out in our dressing room and it's like, immediately you're on point and I'm running down to the stage level to see where they're at, because these things kind of happen. And that's how theater works. Something different every night will happen, and you have to be present in the moment. So I regard my theater work and my theater life to what I do now in television and film. When I don't have that feeling, that familial feeling, it allowed me to feel a part of something, connected to something, and connected to someone.
Yeah.
And so therefore I realized I wasn't ever going to be acting alone. And so now I translate that into my meditation. When I go to my trailer, I try to leave enough time so I can sit a little bit and really get calm and get present with me, so that when I enter what is that television space or film space where everyone's in a hurry and 1,000 things are going on, I can be rooted and grounded. And then when my scene partner enters, I can put my focus on that scene partner and really cultivate a relationship.
Yeah.
And so to me, theater is all. It really is. It allows a space to which, how to find your way of working, you know?
Yeah.
And that's been so important to me, Neil.
And I should note, as Giancarlo made a brief reference to it, but I just want to talk about a play we did together, and in the context of when Giancarlo came into the Atlantic Theater Company in the early 90s. You were also, for me, very instrumental in turning me on to all kinds of actors, directors, and writers. And we were talking about plays, and he said, there's this amazing writer named Edwin Sanchez who's going to Yale right now, and you had read this play. And we were used to do summers in Vermont. And he said, can we read the play in Vermont? I said, yeah, come on up. And it was a wild play. And for those of you who don't know, Giancarlo also, not only does he have an incredible sense of style and clothes, which we'll get into at some point, he also at that point was into motorcycles. So he got on his motorcycle, I don't know, it was a Triumph or something. He drove it 5 hours up to Vermont. And we did this reading of this amazing Eddie Sanchez play called Trafficking in Broken Hearts. Which was wild. And then we decided we went great. We decided he and I would act in it together, and Anthony Rapp was in it. And we got a very young Anna Shapiro, who had it was her first gig in New York as a director. We convinced her, because she had been a colleague of Eddie Sanchez at Yale, to come and do this play, which was a wild play. And it was, for me, an extraordinary experience. But I bring it up in the context not only of your willingness to champion Eddie's voice, and Eddie's a great writer, and we went on to do his play Clean, and he's written many, many extraordinary plays, but your curiosity and your desire to hear all voices, and that was a gift that you gave us, and also just in terms of being able to act with you. And it was, like I said, it was, the play itself pushed lots of envelopes and was great and controversial and did very, very well, but it was a gift for me. And we've continued that as we've gone forward as a theater company and all that. So I thank you for that. And I thank you for that experience. That was quite a play.
I so enjoy working with you on that and Atlantic, because I felt like, and I still feel as if Atlantic explores areas that many other theater companies do not. And I feel like the theater allows us to be in wonder and expectation, not only as an actor, but also as an audience. And so that is of great importance to me, to be able to, and something that I actually really solidified throughout my career, but it began with Atlantic, was to honor the playwright's word and intention, because I really feel like intention is everything. And so to be able to play ball with a family of actors who are steeped in communicating and with the intention of raising the play, but serving the writer's intention, has always been very important to me. When you move on and you go into television and theater, you have writers' intentions in a different way. And many actors feel like they can embellish and do things that'll make it better. But that, to me, is my ego. Like, because I that might be my strong suit, and I want to say it that way. I want to do it that way for whatever reason. but the real challenge to be on the edge and not know what's going to happen is to be serving up the intention of the whole. And when I do things that are in a different vein in Hollywood, I realize there's certain actors who want to serve themselves. And I certainly, and I think I was told years ago, Neil, that acting was a way of healing your personality. So it's a way of me looking, because we can play a lot of different characters and do a lot of different things, but there is also another track to that, is how do I get out? When I worked on a play called Zoom Man and the Sign at the Negro Ensemble Company, which I won my first Obie for, how do I get out? When I was doing Kevin's play, Distant Fires, such a very astute investigation of people who are workers and what that life is like to be a common man. How do I get out after the play is over? Not whipping myself, but being able to allow myself to come back to Giancarlo. And that's when I always know Trafficking in Broken Hearts, man, we had to go there, Neil. I mean,
I
from
know.
the first day of rehearsal, we were both very nervous. And from that moment that Anna says, okay, get it over with. And we looked at each other and went, oh, I'm playing a hustler and I've got to hustle Neil and we've got to be kind of falling in love and all that. And we looked at each other and it was that moment of not knowing what the hell was going to happen. And we just, man, lip locked, got it over with. And Anna just went, we have a play.
You saved my ass.
Willing.
It was my second year as artistic director, and there we are, both stark naked on the stage, just going, here it is. And but like you say, it was just trusting. I mean, you caught me in trusting the truth of who we are, just guided us. And that's the thing about Eddie's play, is Eddie's writing is so beautifully honest that there's no bullshit, so to speak. And it's but that's amazing to me. And so on that, because even before we started working together, you had already, I don't know, I was going to say as you were talking, there's such a selflessness to you, that you have such a curiosity and a hunger, not only in your work, but in your life, which we'll get into too. You have so many amazing interests to me. Talk a little bit about like I know you did a lot of amazing work with Spike Lee and your early work with Spike Lee, and how while you were doing all this incredible theater work, you were finding your way into, you know, some of the great seminal movies and independent filmmakers that were going on. Talk about that, how you, as you got into film stuff and early Spike stuff.
Yes, I will. And I'll tell you a little story about a casting director named Shirley Rich, who I really adored. And Shirley's gone now. And I was going up, I wanted to make a transition from doing musical comedy because I felt like African Americans were sort of the entertainment. And so I knew Ben Vereen, and my mother had worked with Pearl Bailey, and I had seen all those shows where I was told that was my future. You know, be a song and dance guy on Broadway, because that's where African Americans could excel. But I didn't want to.
Your mother was tell them your mother was an opera singer, right?
My mother was an opera singer who went from Karamu House in Cleveland, Ohio, to doing a production of Porgy and Bess in Europe, and also Behind the Iron Curtain, alternating Bess with Leontine Price. And so she always wanted me to be an opera singer, and I love singing, and I have a beautiful voice, which is how it led me to do Broadway musicals. And certainly my mother coached me, and I thought that would be my life. But I realized there was a hunger inside of me, and Neil, thank you. I mean, it is a curiosity about not only about life, but how far can I go? And I went and auditioned for one of my first major feature films outside of being an extra with Shirley Rich, and she looked at me and said, "Giancarlo," in a very sweet voice, "you have to learn how to act." And I was crushed, and she saw the tears come to my eyes, and she said to me, "Look, you know how to act for Broadway, and you get to the last row, but to act for film and television is different." And so she suggested that I go. I had been to acting school at the Actors Institute. I had worked in different places and had some different acting classes. And then she amended what she said. She said, "Look, it's not that you have to learn how to act. You have to relearn how to act in a different venue." So, you know, I went away to the Henry Street Settlement, did a lot of plays, and that was the precursor to me working with Atlantic. And then a year later, she called me. I got a call saying, "Shirley wants you to read for a film called Taps." I said, "Well, they shot that movie already." They said, "Well, actually, they didn't. It got held up." And I went to read with her one morning at 11 o'clock, and her mouth dropped open. And she said, "What did you do?" I said, "I did what you told me to do." And she said, "Wow. Can you come back in 2 and read for Stanley Jaffe and read with Tim Hutton?" And that led me to my first major feature film for 20th Century Fox called Taps. And so I fell in love with film and was so very impacted by George C. Scott. And we met later in the theater. And that led me to have the opportunity to be able to go back to the stage and do a show called Zooman and the Sign, of which I won my first Obie for, and Spike Lee came to see it. And he was all over me to go and do his production of School Days, which then was a full-on musical about a black college in Atlanta based on his personal experience. And so I was excited to be able to work with him because I felt as if I had spent time with him. And we had called a friendship. He was working at Maxie Cohen's First Run Features downtown with his little white gloves cleaning film. And I would go down and visit him, and I'd go, "Wow, did you ever think you'd have the white minstrel gloves on, Spike?" He would say, "No, I never really realized I'd be doing this." And we talked about character, because he was raw back then, and he wrote all his scripts by hand. And I loved his handwriting and how he would write the script out. And so I did my first feature film with him, was School Days, and Lawrence Fishburne, our wonderful, wonderful cast that was a part of that, and learned quite a bit about an innovative way of thinking about film. Because in a way, it was a family put together once again. We were on the AU Campus Center, so it was a big canvas that we could shoot at. And Spike was courageous. And I learned how to have courage with him. So much so that on the quad one day, I felt like his writing needed something. And this is very unlike me, but I felt like, and I said, okay, just say the words though, because he wrote it and you want to stick to it. And then Fishburne came to me and said, what do you think of this next thing we got to do? I said, it has its holes, but I don't dare fill it in, although I'm thinking about it and I have an alternate version of what I want to say. And Fishburne's mouth dropped. He went, you do? And I said, yeah, do you? He said, well, I've been thinking about it. I said, well, why don't you go off during lunch and write it? And I've got my version. And if you have as much courage as Spike has allowed me to have, then let's just go for it. And we decided that we wouldn't read it beforehand. I didn't know what he was going to say, and he didn't know what I was going to say. Right. So most of my dialogue was most keenly changed because I wanted those ideas. And this is what I learned from theater. You have to have something behind just the dialogue that enriches the character. And for us at Atlantic, the teaching of practical aesthetics reminds me of meditation. It allows you nothing else in your head except to be in this moment right now.
Yeah. And
that to me is a meditative moment. But to have other things up your sleeve and other things you're thinking in television and film, to me, has served me. So we got out there and we did, and the lines worked seamlessly. I was surprised by what he said. He was surprised and shocked by what I said. But it was all in line with the intention of what Spike wanted. But at the end of the scene, and Spike was on a ladder with a bullhorn. And at the end of the scene, everyone on the quad knew we weren't doing the scene we had just rehearsed. And Spike went, cut, angrily. Who said that? And there was silence, and Fishburne wouldn't speak. And I said, I did. And there was this pause, and everyone waited for him to just rip me a new one. And he said, that was great. Say it again. Roll it. And that was it. I tried that one more time with Spike on Do the Right Thing, where we took over a block in Brooklyn, and it was such another wonderful experience in that we had, sort of in Spike's backyard, because Brooklyn had become sort of his home, and Spikeville, as I could nickname it. And Joie Lee came to me and said, oh, the scene where I'm cleaning off my sneaker after having it been stepped on or rode over by John Savage. And Joie said, I don't like my lines. I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. He's your brother. You could go tell him to rewrite it. And she said, I can't do that. I said, well, let's see what might come if you had some ideas and I had some ideas. And so I tried the same prank, and we started talking, and Spike was like, cut, those aren't the lines. G-Money, what are you doing? What are you doing? He came to me, put his arm around me, and walked me down the block. It's too expository. It's too expository. I said, Spike, I just want to do what you, yeah, I know. Well, what's not working? I said, Joie said her stuff wasn't working. My stuff works. I put it on her, and he was like, okay, cool. Look, okay, look, my sister, you know what? Just do the lines. I'm like, good. And we did. So it reminded me of my efforts at Atlantic to just be really curious about and ask questions. Because as actors, sometimes we feel like, and I have multiple experiences, one more recently with Baz Luhrmann, the great Baz Luhrmann. Oftentimes we're led to believe that we should just be the channel, which I totally and completely feel. I'm a channel for the directive of the writer and director, but what if it doesn't work? Then we may be in fear to ask questions. So now I've learned to ask questions, to be really clear about what your directive is, to bring all of my being to it. Oh, that's really what you want to say. Well, on this and this and this and this, I have a little difficulty there. Maybe you could find a way to clean that up and help me understand that better. And then after the writer explains it to me, I go, oh, okay, I can use those words to depict what you need me to. I just have to flip my head around. But it's to take the best, leave the rest, but don't leave yourself out as an actor, because there's something about you that we really want to see, which is why you got the part. Not to be opinionated, but to be open. And I further that after I directed my first 2 feature films, because I realized I want to be a director that hears everyone and gets all the suggestions. I'm the guy that at the Greek diner, it's so hard for me to choose anything. My kids laugh at me, like, you know, there's so many choices to have, and I want to create my own choice.
Yeah.
And that's the key. Look, I don't want the hamburger with the cheese on it. I really want to have a broccoli sandwich. Could you do that? You have broccoli, you got buns, you know. So, and it's asking for what you want in life and projecting what you want as an actor. It's all very in the same tunnel, the same pocket, the same bubble, with envisioning and seeing your whole career.
Yeah, and I'm thinking as you're talking, because you've played such a wide variety of roles. I mean, and it's just gotten just better and better in terms of all of the things you've been able to do. But like you say, bringing the truth of yourself to a role, serving the vision, but also you as a person. I mean, you know, I think of some of the roles, like even the Bob Robert, like you've played like activist roles. You've played people who are brave and who have the courage to speak up. And I guess a couple before, because I want to get into this moment and the activism of this moment and your thoughts on that. But I guess I want to talk about how that your passion, your curiosity, your feelings about the world have informed even your work recently, because you've done so much incredible work recently, and all of the, you know, Breaking Bad and all of this stuff. But I guess I don't know what the question is. It's really how, off of what you were saying, that those two things coming together, who you are as a person, because you were even somebody who turned me on to, you were part of the Creative Coalition, right? And
Yes.
we did this, Anna and Giancarlo and I and Bobby Watson did this benefit for Mumia Abu-Jamal, live from death row. And that you turned me on in the mid 90s to, I mean, when I was a kid, a little bit in Vermont with my parents and activism, but it was really amazing, your passion for what was right. And I guess I'm thinking about how that's jived with your career.
I really feel like there's no separation, because I feel like we who have the opportunity to be performers and to be honest performers and humble performers have a duty to serve up our environment, our country, whether it be to uplift or to terrify through a character, but to shed some light behind the veil of what really is and what is acceptable and what we've learned to accept. And that comes down to what we've been taught and everything else. And so I always feel like there's a thread there. There's a thread there in my life to my beliefs and my belief that people are intrinsically good. And that when pushed too far, people either stand up courageously and see things for what they actually really, really are, and they go and make their statements known. It's similar. Years ago, I was asked if I thought any characters I played. I'm being asked this question a lot because last year, you're right, I did 5 different shows in 5 different kind of genres even, but didn't want to forget the throwback to what's happening now, even down to thinking about what my costume would be. And in our wonderfully connected Mandalorian show, Star Wars, Jon Favreau's a genius, wrote all of the episodes. David Filoni from the original Star Wars clan, and very close to George Lucas. And I started to go back and researching and knowing history is very important for me as an actor. So I have a feeling of where I'm placed within that. And so years ago, I was asked, do I have a responsibility? And I'm asked this more and more, with all of what's going on in the world with the Black Lives Matter movement. Do I have a responsibility in the way, and they go back, and you depicted a police officer here, and you were shot by a police officer here, and do you feel like you have a responsibility always playing kind of characters when I was younger who were less than enough, and maybe the guy who's always in the police car with his hands cuffed behind him? And so I stopped doing those roles for many years because I didn't want to lend that view. We had so few views of who we are as African Americans. And I got this from Spike Lee. Like would protest that it's not unconventional casting. We don't have the ability to be able to see ourselves as human without a color. And so recently when I watched Do the Right Thing again, because it was the 30-year anniversary, and I had just been watching a news feed of the Minneapolis police station on fire. The morning I saw it, they were on the roof setting up sandbags and their police viewing point. And I was curious about that. And then that night, I saw the whole building on fire, people running in front of the camera, Black Lives Matter, no justice, no peace. And I was really transported right back to the last scene of Do the Right Thing. And I had tears in my eyes because I realized, oh, nothing's really changed, except it has. Except now, the whole world has become involved with a movement of change for all humanity. And that's what I wish for. I wish for a place where we really root out, each of us personally, what's going on for us. So what I'm saying is that there's no difference, and my belief is, yeah, I have a responsibility. Yeah, I don't play those thugs anymore on that level who are going to wind up in the police car shot dead on the street, because we're so in a different society now, Neil. We've grown up with this Zoom thing and the phone, and all of the images that we project are taken in on a very deep and visceral level by people. Yeah. And so when you hear, young people and the guy in Washington recently who said, I'm quitting, and the young Black man is calling him a pig. Well, we were calling pigs, instead of police officers back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, right? But that doesn't mean they are pigs. It means that, yes, there's some systemic relationship there. I happen to know and ride my motorcycles with a bunch of police officers, 3 different police officers. And I happen to know that that's a fraternal society. So therefore, understanding history is important. Yeah. If I'm a part of a fraternal society, which I am, and even in our Black Lives Matter movement, and in our when people refer to your white skin and so you have white privilege, well, we have privilege too, dude, because we're in a family, a very special family of thespians. Yeah. That has a different place in our society as well. So yeah, I believe that part of my responsibility is to do what I do as a channel to the utmost of my ability, so people can see it as a prism and a mirror to the world, to where they fit into the world.
Well, I've heard you talk about, I watched a clip of you talking at a film festival. I can't remember which one, but you've talked about the power of stories to, whether it's in the theater or film, to allow people to expand their vision, and stories as a catalyst to open people's minds. And I think, obviously, like you're saying, that's what we do in the theater, but your ability to do that on film, and great filmmakers and great film directors have the ability to do that. But I feel like you've not only embraced that in your work, but you've embraced it in your life. Like you say, it has been one, as far as I'm concerned.
It's so important to me back in my days of Sundance to sit around a table and have a storyteller. We had a storyteller come in 3 years in a row who extended oral history. And to me, that's very close to what we do in the theater. And it allows your imagination to soar. So to me, to have the imagination that, and to have the imagination say, okay, this world can be like this, and that's what I want to lend my spirit and my work to, whether it be protesting, whether it be speaking out for those who don't have a voice, whether it be performing, which is our strong suit, to show people a different reality, that the world can be different. But the seed is planted from imagination. Yeah. And this is why I'm so passionate about what I do, because your imagination can take you anywhere. Right. And it can really change the way people view the essence of our society. So, all my girls who are learning, I have 4 daughters from 16 to 24, and my 24-year-old was the first protester for equal rights for women, for rape victims. And she led the way. And so what I'm trying to say is that to speak out and use what we have to make a better world is almost, I don't see how it can ever be separated from what we do. Because like right now, the lights are dark on Broadway, right? Yep. Because we've got whatever we believe this corona extension of the flu, partly also connected to economics. When I hear of a 94-year lady who goes to the hospital because she had a heart attack and she eventually dies, and then it's written COVID, that's money for the hospital. So to understand the economical advantage of these numbers being so high and people claiming it's not real, is it real? It's the flu. And yes, people who are compromised are going to get it, but it's tied into all these trillions of dollars in the first, and I don't want to get too political, but the first 3 days that the vaccine's out, they'll make $3 trillion. So again, you know, to dismantle and really take a look at what's going on with our police. I have to remind my children, they're also there to protect you. Not all of them are bad, but it's a fraternal society, and they all have dealt and learned through each other a certain way of dealing and being, especially in certain communities. So this is all an opening, and change is going to come, I think, sweeping change swiftly. And I can't wait for the theater to come back, because then we will have so many voices that are going to speak to being rational and reasonable, so that one day, you know, I don't have to just go, I don't go to go out in the street and just go, I'm black and represent myself that way, because, you know, the truth is, you know who I am. I'm Italian. You know, when I was on Jay Leno, I'm like, you know, I said to him, look, you know, I'm an Italian man posing as a black guy, because I'm posing as, I say that.
I'm half Italian too. I always like, we're both half Italian.
Yeah, we're Goombas.
Yeah.
You know, and to understand that, not that it lessens any part of my African-American self, because I know my mother's history. And I know, and there's one thing I'm going to say is it's really very important, is to have the experience on your own. Because I know my days in New York. And I remember, Neil, storefront church. The whole front of the theater was being redone. The whole theater inside was almost finished. We had finished rehearsal, and the lights were dark, and and I walked out to my car to change my clothes, and I was rehearsing in a suit, because that was my character. And I heard sirens down the street, didn't pay much attention, got into my car, got my change of clothes to come back in and change. And then the police cars roared up on me, 3 of them, 6 cops, guns out. And I'm standing there. And I just froze, dropped my bag, and I'm hoping like, you know, some of our white cast might come out of the theater and save me. Neil, save me. And I will never forget this moment. What are you doing? We're rehearsing a play. We're in tech. It's 12 hours. I explained the whole thing to him. Yeah, right. Blah, 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 blah. I said, can I ask you what's going on? There was a robbery down the street. Someone was hit in the head and robbed. I said, okay, is there a description? They said, yeah, somebody in a hoodie. Do I look like I'm in a hoodie? You know, and then they insisted and walked me. You remember this. They walked me into the theater, you know, to corroborate that I was who I was. So I always, I carry all those experiences with me, because I have to. I'm trying to survive out here in a world where, yes, I'm a part of our fraternal society, but yes, I have an obligation not to mouth off, not to be angry, but to suss out the situation properly so I don't get shot. The next day, Al Sharpton called me. If you remember, I declined to be on Al's show and take it up as like, blah, 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 blah. I did mention it, talked about it, because I knew at that point in time, we weren't where we are now. To dismantle that kind of racism and all that's going on, that's systematic. But my desire is to live all of who I am. And to understand that and be able to do that. And I'll end by this particular, I was asked recently, which I'd never thought of. I play Moff Gideon in, you know, Mandalorian and Star Wars, and I purposely have a very zeitgeist costume. I also had a similar zeitgeist costume in School Days, that through its leverage back, or its origins back to Nazi Germany, representing power and control, representing what we're going through in our country now. It's a fight for power, control, and money. And soon, hopefully, that'll adjourn itself, and we'll be in a place where we can really work to come together as human beings. But I could have jumped on the bandwagon, but I want to hold myself and my feet to the fire for people to understand that I'm mixed, and I have a whole other sack of crap I'm carrying, being mixed and not accepted by white or black. And, you know, and my best friend growing up was Jewish. So all I'm saying is this acting thing has been, and so I was asked this question with Mandalorian, and I was shocked by it just the other day, and it's in an article already. Everything comes out so fast. Are you, is it interesting to you that you were the first Moff, or the first villainous character who is a black man in Star Wars? And I went, Wow, what a question. So as I tell my children, you can focus that lens anywhere you want it to focus. I'm in complete respect of this movement. So happy that things are going to change, that a police officer will not be sent to my home if I have a mental breakdown, that it'll be a mental health worker. Yeah, we need this. This is the sign of a society that is moving toward an elevated level to understand, oh, you really need to see a police officer there. Or if someone is on drugs, you send mental health people, and you send someone who knows and has worked with those people who have had that break, so that regular officers who are forceful and warriors, just like I am, won't be sent to that call, because that's their instinct. So you got the shootout officers, bank robbery, yeah, send that guy. Murder, send that guy. But we're starting to have a more sensitive society, and I can't wait till we get back to the theater, because then we can be encouraged to see some of these stories that are germinating now during this time of pandemic. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it all turns out.
Yeah. Well, and before we I know we want to get to some questions in a few minutes. I wanted, it's so great to hear you talking about all this stuff. And I guess I just wanted to add to it that my experience of you both as a person, as an actor, as an artist, and as an activist is not only about your courage and strength, but also, and this is, I think, so apparent in your work, your compassion, that you have this sort of sense of really looking at people and characters and sort of going to bat for them. And there's something about that I find very moving. And I guess because you also, I've already mentioned this, you sort of turned me on to spirituality a little bit, because I felt like every time you came into a room or you approached a part, there was always a spirituality to it. There was always an element of where you were, energy. And that changed me a little bit, just in terms of, because there's something about you centering yourself, like you were saying before, meditating and all that stuff, that was inspiring to me. So I guess the final question I'll sort of a little bit is process for the younger actors. And you've talked a little bit about it, but is there any advice that you would give to younger actors starting out now, just a couple of things that would be helpful to them as they come
Absolutely.
in?
Because I think what I lacked in the beginning, and I faked, and was that confidence and that courage that my voice meant something. And so for any actor, your voice has to mean something to you, but it has to go around the ego, so that, because what we do is passionate and compassionate. And for me to be representing all different kinds of characters from different walks of life, there has to be an interior of compassion and understanding, something that's relatable and human. So humanity has no color to me. Humanity's in light of an experience that happens. And if you can relate to your experiences, that becomes your best teacher. And to be organic and to be original is important to all of us. But then sometimes it bridges the gap of going into my ego. And so what I find for me is to remember my days of theater and my humility. And I think as human beings, sometimes, and actors as well, when you're asked a question, we're afraid to say, I don't know. But I don't know allows the space to discover. It allows a little space and a little room to get behind your analytical brain or your intelligent brain. I love working with people who are so much smarter than me, because I don't feel threatened by them, and many actors do. We're supposed to be smart. We're supposed to be talented. We're supposed to read the phone book like it was Shakespeare. All those things. But to take the pressure off that and really see who you really are, and to have and connect to the passion. The greatest thing in my life is that I still love so much of what I do. I love it. And I find that I'm inspired by it. And so if you can, say sometimes, I don't know what that answer is. So my process, many times, is still that theatrical process, because I feel like I got to do my worst acting school of acting to get to my center and my calm. But we're performers, so actors want to act. That's like what we've been given. So why not just go all out and make it huge and big and flubby and all over the lot to find out where the water is going to find its balance. And to me, that's play. The best part of a play to me, the best part, the best beginning, the best moments are in the rehearsal process, because then you can take the fear away of failing. I want to fail, and I want to fail there. And sometimes I want to fail during a performance. So I'm not, inscrutable. I'm not perfect. We're using our human body. And the other thing, so back to process. Acting is physical. Like, it's physical. Like, when you have that character in your Bob Roberts, I was playing someone who had palsy, and I went down to the cerebral palsy place on 23rd Street, spent the week there with all different variations of people who had palsy. Learned to respect them, learned to not talk down to them, learned that they were smarter than me and great human beings that just had disabilities that they had to get around. But if you listen long enough, you hear their story. And so for me, acting is a physical thing, and my process, when I get a script, I don't put a voice to it. I want to hear the voice of the writer. I'm like, oh, wow, that's a funky way to say that. But yeah, I get it. I never start by reading it to learn it. I start by reading it to be affected by it. And then I go, okay, now I got to get on my ball game here. I got to find a voice for this person. And then I'll just read it again and again and again, and I'll start to whisper. I'll whisper. I won't give and I do a lot of people who have accents from different cultures, and I want to honor that, but that comes later. And I listen, I start whispering. And then from the whisper, finally one day, a voice comes that's not my own. And I'm like, oh, wow.
And it's still coming from you. It's still coming from you, but it's not your own.
It's coming from my vehicle, but I'm realizing I've put together the writer's intention. I've had an idea about sound, and then I move into it that way. So and then sometimes I'll take the whole script and I'll write out every word of every character. Because what we learn in the theater, you'll never, ever forget, because you have the experience of listening.
Listening. Exactly.
And you can hear that other person's intention and voice. And that's why the theater is so absolutely marvelous. After the play state of rehearsal, we have an audience coming in. You're nervous. You want to put on a great show. But the only way that happens is for me to hear the interaction of my scene partners. What are you saying? And you said, you didn't say it that way last night. And if I'm really on my cues, I'm like, whoa, he just made that line so different than any time he's ever said it before. And not that all those, you're breaking it down like a robot or a machine, but if your heart is open, bam, that hits you. And I'm going to react like this, or I'm going to react differently every single night. And that is true training of true artistry and true presence.
That's awesome. I know I want to give some time because there's a lot of questions. So I'm going to jump to Annie and see if there's, Annie, you got some questions?
Yes, we have a lot of fans in the audience, Giancarlo, from all throughout your career. We have questions including requests for you to sing opera, which don't worry, I'm not going to have you do that, but a lot. Oh my goodness.
Nice. Still got it.
So one is, what prompted you to start incorporating meditation into your preparation for your roles and in your life?
It really started in my life a long time ago when I was introduced to City Yoga by my brother, but it came full circle when I was asked to do Breaking Bad. So it had been a practice of mine always to try to get out of the way. And I wanted to say earlier, because I am that guy who is the warrior. I am that black guy who's angry. I am that guy who has a big ego. And I was just tired of dealing with that, because after you work so long in the theater and you don't make it, make it like you thought you should, like to be a star, I very quickly realized this was my love. I don't care if I make it or not. Who cares how good I am? I want to just honor my originality and my intention. But it was Breaking Bad. It was Breaking Bad because I realized very quickly that I wanted to play a character that no one's seen before. I didn't want to play the stereotypical, Italian mobster with a little puppy who was mean and nasty. You knew all about him the first time you looked at him. I wanted to play a guy that you had to figure out. So I wanted always there to be a thought in my brain. I didn't know how to do it. So I had always sat a little bit on any production before I go, into the Coliseum. But it was Breaking Bad that allowed my practice to be cohesive with the motion and movement of my character. What I mean is, I roll out of bed, I want to give thanks and praise and connect with myself first thing. So I roll to the set, I repeat that process. I sit there and get even, I call it. Get dropped, I call it. So I'm out of my own skin. And so my practice became to breathe and not worry about, like, you see, I'm getting amped up. I want to get to all the questions. I don't want to talk too much, and all these nervousness is coming on me right now, right? But the breath allows me to calm myself, and that solidified my being able to be attentive, take all of Neil in, his whole being, just by looking at him, into his eyes, hearing his voice, hearing his breathing. And so it allowed me to put my attention somewhere else other than me. And it's scary. It's unsettling for people if you're really thoughtful, because I'm not going to answer you so quickly. I'm going to sit here and listen and really come back with a thoughtful answer. And that was the key to that character. And ever since then, that practice has been a part of my ongoing work in television and film and in theater.
It's great. It's great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what in your life or career haven't you had a chance to do that you hope to have a chance to do someday?
I love Shakespeare. I'd like to do more. It's such a challenge to hold all of that richness of dialogue in your being. So I'd like to be able to play Hamlet, play Lear. I also am fascinated by Pushkin, a writer and poet who was of mixed race, who was so very graceful and had so educated, so poetic. I would like to do that as well. I'm obsessed now with playing an everyman. I played some powerful guys, and last year was an interesting year because I was asked to do this Mandalorian character, Moff Gideon, very firm, very strong, warrior, leader. I equate him to Durga, who is an Indian saint who's seen on a tiger with a sword, and she has like 7 arms, and she has a head in one. He'll cut your head off. So when you do something well, you might be asked to do it again, or they may cloak that. And so they call you, and if they ever say to me, we want you to play a Gus-like character, I'm like saying no, or I'm saying, I don't see it that way. Let me come in and let's figure it out. So I've had to play characters that kind of close to each other, powerful beings, but I wanted them all to be different. And last year, Moff Gideon, I made him different than Gustavo Fring, made that guy different because Gustavo Fring is calculating, trying to get you to do what he wants you to do. You know he's going to win. He'll leave you in this meeting, and then a hitman will show up at Neil's door and be Durga and cut his head off. He didn't know it was coming, but yeah, I'm responsible for it. And then Stan Edgar and the boys. Company man, corporate company, really equates to our world here, has to wrangle these superheroes who have superpowers, but who are human. Interesting, fascinating show from a comic book. So there are many things I would like to do. Now I'm obsessed with playing an everyman, and I'm cultivating that because I want to play, because I really am empathetic toward people who have $1,000 in the bank right now and are losing their mortgage. I've been bankrupt twice. I've been through that experience. I want to play that guy who doesn't know how to dig out and find out how to elicit the compassion from people he has to ask to help him. So I'm working on a piece now where I'm playing a guy who's just a nominal education, a good heart, like so many of our people in our world today, but not knowing how to get over what's happening right now and having to be responsible and tell his children he can't pay, we're losing the house, we're losing this, we're losing that, but how he steps into a world that allows him some monetary success, but he knows it's going against his moral compass. So that's what I'm obsessed with now, and I hope to play very soon. Hopefully it'll be with AMC. We'll see.
That's great.
Well, I'll just do one more and then turn it over to Neil. How do you, obviously you have many, many people knocking on your door between TV and film and theater. How do you navigate what projects you choose and staying committed to the career choices you make at any moment?
It's my gut. It all comes back to the moment of the theater. When I read a play and we're able to work on it and help the playwright make it better, it's my gut. It tells me. I've been so very blessed, even through the trials and tribulations of my life and career, having a family, big family, having a lot of responsibility, I was always urged by my former wife never to make any choices that were based on money. And I never had, but when you have responsibility, you have the pressure, especially with us. Most people think, you're in this entertainment industry, some of our parents said, oh, you're never going to make it. I was told, when I went bankrupt, you're never going to recover. So for me to stay true to myself, that was something I learned from George C. Scott, who doesn't have a lot of film work out there, was a great actor. Stay true to yourself. Believe in yourself. Understand that it's not going to be, look, if you don't have struggle, then you don't have character. Struggle allowed me to have character and to think back, oh, well, why would I want to look, when all my friends were doing TV and making so much money, I was always jealous I didn't have a 5 or 6 year contract, but I realized the universe, God and Goddess, wanted something else for me. Last year, and it's unheard of to do 5 shows at one time because everyone has to subordinate to another. And you'll learn this, young actors out there, that who's in first position, who's in second position, who's in third position. I did 5 shows and it really allowed me to know that let your heart guide. The material is the most important thing. The story is the most important thing. Not if I have one line in it, if I believe in that story. So yeah, I used to read scripts and go, oh man, I'm only in this, I'm only in this for, and like be disappointed and want to say no. If that script moved me as a whole, not just as what I had to do in it. I had a movie come out, it's coming out soon, Disney Plus, I'm pregnant. It's the most beautiful little small movie. I did 2 really small movies that I have minimal, screen time, but I believed in the story. This Unpregnant is such a fabulous story about a teenage girl who can't get an abortion in her state, and she has to go through another state. It's funny, it's entertaining. I've had that opportunity to do that, and I come in to it very short period of time, but I believed in what it was saying. Stargirl, Jerry Spinelli book, another movie I did this year. I love Jerry Spinelli. I call my children, they had read all the books. Same thing with Maze Runner. One of my children had read all 6 books. And I said, okay, I started reading the first book. I said, but I got to go fly and meet the director. Give me the lowdown. Give me the lowdown. I was excited about the story of survival, of humanity. So for me, what has guided me has always been the story, just like being back in the theater. It will never change for me. The Mandalorian is, George Lucas was connected to, finishing a thought from earlier, connected to Joe Campbell, the power of myth. He loved Joe Campbell. And so this story is a mythological story about empowering us to be heroes, our own heroes. And so all you young actors out there, producers, writers, the thing I would say, and Neil asked me this question, and I answered it with a long answer, but write. If you're an actor, write. Because that's going to help you find your voice. Write a script, write something for yourself. Just don't be the person that you just want to be hired because you want to be a star or you want to make money. Do it because it fills you up. And because the ideas that are encompassed in what we do are not just existential ideas. They're ideas that affect each and every one of us in our society. So you have a great, great responsibility. Doing a show in New York, Godfather of Harlem, playing Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Wow, I could just go in and play this guy, very rich character, very boisterous, very over the top, but I needed to go back and learn his record. Knew about him when I was a kid. Knew he was a preacher at Abyssinian Baptist Church. Oh, religion's a part of his life, but he drank and he smoked and he was a womanizer. How does that fit? Well, nothing's black and white. And I went, wow, yeah, that's a part of my life. That's been a part of my life. I can do this. But I had to know his record in Congress, what he fought for. He almost spoke at the March on Washington. He and Martin Luther King were always in conflict because they stole each other's sermons. You can't make this stuff up. The guy was a big, huge figure who really knew John Lewis and who I was so happy to meet, but used his life, didn't make himself small. So for all you actors out there, you're big and rich and full, and you have ideas. Change the world with your words. Change the world with your performance. Allow yourself to be galvanized. Allow yourself to be a channel. Get out of your ego. Leave it behind, and you will soar. Because when you're committed to raising the whole, like you do your work on a play, like I still do that same work. It hasn't changed. The blocks switch around. They change a little bit. but that's my center. I have a composition book, little blackboards that you use at school, Neil, the black and the marble book. I get a marble book. Sometimes it's filled beginning to end. Sometimes it's just 10 pages done. But that marble book is a dedication to the process. So honor yourselves, and through honoring yourself, you're going to be the channel. You're going to be the light that people are going to want to see and look at. Don't allow that light don't allow yourself to think that that light is your ego. That light is inside of you. And we want to see all of you. And I hope we do, and I know we will.
That's a perfect place, I think, to end. And before we end and bring Claire back, I just wanted to say thank you again. As everybody can see, and I've known it for however many years, since the early 90s when I first met Giancarlo, it's not only your passion, but your ability to see possibility, your hunger for the adventure. And I can, as you're talking about it, like you said, it's not about getting famous and being a star, it's about love of the work. And I think it's such a great reminder, as you've been an example of that love of the work and passion for the work and process. And like you say, how great the rehearsal process is. So thank you for this today. It's a blessing to have you part of the Atlantic, and it's an honor to hear you talk today. And especially in this moment, to hear you talk about this moment in the context of your career means a lot to all of us. So you're amazing. And Claire, do you want to come back? And yeah.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Giancarlo. Thank you. That
You're
was
very welcome.
awesome. And maybe we can find a picture of trafficking and get that to audiences. I know it exists. Archival photos.
Giancarlo and us eating breakfast eating ice cream in bed.
In bed.
You are both fully clothed in the photo that I have seen, I promise.
We're good lovers.
Okay.
I thought we were very good.
Okay.
No, I second everything Neil said. Thank you so much. And we had a ton of questions that obviously we couldn't get through, but thank you to all of those of you who entered some really great questions and for the love of Giancarlo's career and this amazing hour we spent together. Go ahead.
Claire, I just want to offer up, because I know sometimes I'm long-winded and I get so passionate and excited I jump out of my chair. But if there are some burning desire questions, if you would like to field them via email, I will answer them.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. And we may very well. I took a bunch of screenshots, so we'll make sure to get those out. We've put some information in the chat for those of you who are interested in the last 2 sessions of Live with Atlantic of this series, at least, are coming up next Friday and then the following Monday. And if you are in a position to donate, we are nearing the end of our fiscal year, as Neil said at the top of this. We would welcome a donation of any size, truly. The act itself means the world at this very strange time. And thank you for being in this virtual community with us. And Giancarlo, thanks for those great stories. And
Oh, my pleasure.
Everybody.
Thank you so much, Giancarlo.
Yeah, be well. Bye all.
Bye. Thank you.